Hi there and welcome to today's remote teaching and learning education webinar brought to you by 3P. My name is Alan Dugan and I'll be joined by a couple of other educators from 3P as we discuss and explore remote teaching and learning from different perspectives in education. So as people join us, let me talk to you a little bit about what we hope to achieve today and what we don't want to achieve or what we're not going to achieve. The hope today is really to build a little bit of connection and give an opportunity for us to start to explore these unprecedented times that we find ourselves in. We're really not here to have all the answers. We're not here to provide you with all the solutions, because I don't think at this point in time anyone does. So as we walk through the session today, we'll really be looking to make it as useful and as practical as we possibly can for those of you that are joining us. We realise that time is incredibly precious as educators, and we certainly don't want to waste your time. So in saying that, that means that we want to take as many questions as we possibly can from you and try and answer them or connect you with people who can answer you. So we encourage you to pop questions in the question box, and we will get to them as we go through. Before we kick off, before we get right into it, let me introduce myself a little bit more, and let me introduce the people who are joining us today also. So as I said, my name is Alan Dugan. I'm Global Head of Education at 3P Learning. That means that I'm involved with the strategy of all of our products and the kind of strategy of our product suite from an education perspective. I have just over 15 years classroom experience, taught both in the UK and in Australia in classroom and leadership positions. And today I'm joined by Beverly McCormick and Chris Hogben, who are both on the education team at 3P Learning. I might hand over to them, let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. Beverly, why don't you go first?
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. As Alan has already said, my name is Beverly McCormick, and you can hear from my accent, I'm from Northern Ireland. I joined 3P about 6 months ago as one of their educators, and before that I was teaching in a primary school in the northwest of Northern Ireland. I taught primary 6, and I was in a leadership role there as coordinator of a couple of different subjects.
And thanks, Bev. I'm Chris Hogben. Really looking forward to spending an hour with you this morning. As you can probably tell from my accent, or some might say a lack of accent, I'm from east coast of Australia. I've taught for about 10 years, so that's both in Australia and in the UK in both public and private settings. So yeah, really looking forward to spending this hour with you this morning, and hopefully we can create that forum where we can come together and have some ideas and hopefully get through this together.
Excellent. Thank you both. So as I said at the start, this is really an interactive session. We don't want to speak at you. We certainly don't feel like we have all of the answers. We find ourselves in a very set of unprecedented times, and I don't think I've ever heard or used that word quite so much as I've heard it used and used it myself over the last few weeks. You can tell that each of us are dialing in from home. I apologise if at some point my 7-year-old kid comes running past behind, but we are in those sort of times where we're from home, we're using headphones, technology may fail us here, but really what we're trying to do is to connect. We are a global company here at 3P. We may well have some, or we do have some global insights that may be useful, that may be helpful, that may be able to connect people. And really what we want to do is to start to build up a journey of community through this time where we can connect regularly together and kind of unpack where things are at, see if we can help people answer some questions and really kind of journey through this. So to start, I'd encourage you, if you are sitting at your computer, to hop onto the questions section and to tell us who you are, where you're from, and what sector you're teaching in, whether it be primary or high school or middle school. And if you're brave enough, tell us what's front of mind for you at this point in time. What's worrying you? What's the thing that keeps you up at night? and we will see if we can possibly kind of incorporate that into our discussions as we go through today. So introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and tell us what's front of mind. And I should have said both Beverly and Chris introduced themselves and told you where they were. My accent would suggest that I am somewhere in the remote north of Scotland, but I am currently actually in Sydney and have been for about 10 years. So the accent is misleading, but we've got David, who is a grade 4-5 teacher, and my tongue is going to trip me up here, but he's from Saskatchewan. Did I get that right, David? We work in that zone, that province lots, and I still have to kind of make sure that I've got my teeth in properly to do it. We've got Angela as well, who has just yeah, indeed. David spelled it for me. I can use his help. We've got Angela Dalian, who has just brought reading eggs for her whole school. Excellent, Angela. I hope that that's helpful. We have some daily product webinars running as well that may well be useful to get that up and running and used as best as possible for you, Angela. And if I can help connect you in to those webinars, please let me know. We've got Erin, who's a year 2, 3, 4 teacher from Victoria. That's a spread of year groups there, Erin. Be interested to know the breakdown, how many you've got in that class. We've got Davina, glad that you're joining us, Davina. Jayla is dialing in from Azerbaijan. Primary school teacher working mainstream in year 2. Good to have you with us. We've got some people we've got Erin saying that she's got mathematics and reading eggs and have used them for a few years. Jennifer is dialing in from East Lothian. That makes my heart warm, Jennifer. I know exactly where East Lothian is. Year 5, primary 5, which is year 4 for those using year system. Pupils are just starting to get used to using computers and tech, and I am concerned particularly about how to make sure they engage with the learning at a distance. I think that's a real concern front of mind for many of us about engagement. We have done a survey over this last 4 days of teachers, both teachers who use our products and teachers who don't, and globally. And one of the things that they are telling us consistently is that they are worried about how to engage students during this time. How do they keep students engaged? How do they keep up with curriculum? So we will hopefully touch on some of that today as we go through. Erin's got 18 kids in that classroom.
It's really encouraging to see a great spread of, I suppose, right across the globe here in different ages as well. So that's encouraging. I look forward to hearing from you all.
Excellent. All right, we might start to move through it. And like I said, and I really do want to emphasize this, we are not here with all of the answers today. We certainly don't feel equipped to tell you what to do, and we're certainly not going to try and do that. What we are trying to do is connect, alleviate fears if we possibly can, and start to give some hints and tips on how we might move forward in this journey together. There are some real challenges ahead as we pivot to a distance learning and teaching model. We've got some schools in some regions and some countries where schools are completely closed and teachers are trying to find ways to do teaching and learning completely remotely. We've got some regions and schools who are not completely closed. They've got key workers or essential workers, children in school, and they're trying to meet their needs in a face-to-face environment whilst meeting the needs of a huge number of students that are remote and distance. And then we've got those schools that have not, and regions that have not closed, but maybe closure may be imminent, or a question mark around what closure looks like and how that might work. And so we want to kind of try and talk to all of those scenarios if we can today. We've got the challenge of what it looks like if you've got students that don't have reliable internet access, or they don't have a device to use. How do we help them and support them? So hopefully as we go through the next 45 minutes or so, we can begin to unpack some of that and have a conversation around that. And as I said, I want to really split it up into a few sections. so that we can really answer your questions and connect with each other. The first thing that I think I would say, and the first thing that I would really try and encourage people to do, is to realise that, I'm going to use that word again, we're in real unprecedented times. We are staring, if you like, at a huge abyss. And for many of us, even with significant experience in education, the thought of trying to pivot to distance learning and teaching is a really overwhelming one. When you think about your students and you think about trying to connect them. And so the first thing that I would say, and Beverly and Chris, please jump in at any point, but the first thing I would say is iterate what you're doing. Start slow and don't feel that you have to have all the answers. Make sure that you're taking it slow, you're thinking about what needs to be done. Model learning in that space of think about what's going on there. Think about, let me step that back there. When I say model learning, what I mean by modeling learning is you don't have all the answers. Therefore, be honest with your students. Be clear with your students that you're on a learning journey with them. And most importantly, over the top of that, look for sustainable ways of doing things. You know, we are, like I said, at a point where we are not entirely sure how long this will last, not entirely sure how what it will look like from one day to the next, let alone 1 week to the next. So we need to start off by looking for sustainable ways of doing things. Teachers that we've spoken to who have been on this journey a little bit further along, and we have some teachers out of China and even some teachers out of Italy, would say things like, don't try and do the same thing remotely as you would do face to face, but look for sustainable ways to do things. Fail fast, fail early, and fail often. It's not wrong to get things wrong. In fact, the only way to find out what works is to find out what doesn't work. So, they're my kind of high level overviews right at the start. Look for sustainable ways of doing things. Fail fast, fail early, and fail often. Chris, it sounded like you had something to add there.
Yeah, I'd basically say I think that idea of trying to find something that's sustainable early on is really helpful. And I think one thing that I would say is that if you're feeling overwhelmed, I think that's the same as all of us. Like, we're all feeling overwhelmed. We've never seen anything like this before. And if you're like me, you get just hundreds of different sort of ed tech companies and different resources coming across your desk in your email every single day. And I'm sitting there thinking each time, I'm not thinking, oh, this gets to sort of add to everything. I'm sitting there going, well, what am I missing out on? Am I doing enough? And I think as teachers, we're often sort of perfectionists, and we worry about not giving them enough. And there's that temptation of just sort of flooding our students with everything we've got. I think we need to make it sustainable. So start small. Start small, and then you can always build up. You can always refine that process. You can iterate, and like Alan said, what a great opportunity to have the students involved in this. You can say, you know what, guys, last week we tried an online webinar, but we had some tech issues. So this week we're gonna learn from that, and we're gonna try something a little bit different. Have them on that learning journey, model that learning with them. But we're all feeling overwhelmed. If you're a teacher there and you're struggling through this, you're not alone. We're all in this, and I think creating these spaces where we can have, I suppose, the collaboration, the communication, that forum would be really helpful for a headspace, but also just from resourcing and from ideas. So if you're overwhelmed, you're not alone. But also, there are a lot of parents out there. I know I've had 2 days of homeschooling with my kids at the moment, and if I'm brutally honest, I'm over it. It is really hard work. I feel ill-equipped, and I'm someone with teaching experience, and there's lots of people out there which are really helping out, and there's some other people out there which are making it more difficult as well. And I think try not to listen to those voices that are saying it's just easy, it's just homeschooling, it's been done for years, because we're not just homeschooling. We're trying to teach these students remotely that have normally been in classrooms. And normally homeschooling, you can have those outings. You can go to the library, you can go to the park, you can go to museums. And we're in lockdown, and we've got a lot of these students who are in families, and there's a high amount of stress, there's a high amount of anxiety. This is not a normal learning situation. So I think we're overwhelmed. Go easy on yourself. Be patient with yourself. Try and find something that's sustainable, and don't set the bar too high, especially early on. That's probably my encouragement.
Beverly, did you want to add anything? You are allowed to say no.
Yeah, I'm having some connection issues here, so I hope you can hear me okay. And those strange faces I was making, whereas I was trying to jump between a hard network cable and Wi-Fi, and I'm currently hotspotting off my phone. So even in the ed tech business, we have our issues here too. So we understand where you're coming from. I just want to sort of reiterate what Chris is saying. You know, I think it's at this time it's really important to be kind on yourself. This is not normal teaching classroom situation. You know, kids are at home, they have their own problems. You know, parents maybe are now working at home. You know, you can't get out the same way as you would have normally, and you know, it's a new normal that you have to get used to. And I think as well, we need to remember that, you know, not every family has all the resources at hand to do the wonderful teaching and learning that you would maybe want to do in the classroom. So it's really about stripping back and streamlining and just taking it a day at a time. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. You know, we try that again. I think trying to keep things as normal for kids right now throughout their learning is sort of the most important thing. You know, right now a lot of people are just trying to survive, trying to see what each day brings. And you know, as educators, you need to look after yourselves as well as this responsibility that you have to your class. But by you looking after yourself and being able to demonstrate some sort of calm to your students from distance, you know, I think that that's going to speak volumes in the long term. I've been looking at a lot, online at a lot of timetables that people are putting up. You know, at 9 a.m. you should be doing this, at 10 a.m. you should be doing this, have your break at this time. But the reality is that that's not how family life is working right now. So, you know, set some tasks, sure, but you know, it has to be up to the families how they can cope and how they can deal with those, and you know, make things as easy for families as possible. But in doing so, you know, you're looking after yourself as well. You're not creating tedious plans that are being passed on to parents. And you know, if it doesn't work first time, you try again. We are perfectionists. We know, you know, we are that, but you know, there's perfection and refinement as well. So when something doesn't work, we try again.
And I think
I think that's a great point, and I think there's just a question coming through here from Joyce, where she's talking about the accessing of resources, and some schools are kind of setting up after school meetings or before school to search for resources. Other have researching at different points. Can you address this and give ideas on how to weed through the EdTech offers online? How do you see the viable ones, the ones that are viable, and which we think? And I think that's a really great question. I think one of the things I would say on that space is remember what you're trying to achieve, and I don't say that in a way that's intended to be condescending, but we're trying to achieve some learning, and we're trying to achieve some really effective learning. And I've got 3 children. My oldest is 12, and my youngest is 6, and my youngest is in kindergarten this year. And their school's doing a really good job, or trying really hard to meet the needs of the learners. But my youngest daughter has come home with a pack, you know, a pack that's really thick of sheets asynchronously to work on. And as I think about that, and I look at what she's got there, I think about the need for us to in many ways go back to basics and think about the learning loop that we're trying to close. You know, giving a whole load of resources is great, and it fills time and it keeps them busy. But what happens if and when they get something wrong, and then they consolidate that wrong thinking or that wrong learning? So really, I would encourage, as you think about those resources, think about the resources that are going to help you and the modes that are going to help you to close off that learning loop, and think about what you normally do in the classroom, and think about how you can adjust it or refine it in order to still use it in a remote way. We don't have to go and search for completely new resources all the time to use because we are navigating into a new space. I look at my middle son, and my middle son has access to a device. His school is putting resources online for them through a learning management system. And what they've done is they've taken pictures or scans of particular pages that they want the young people to complete, and they've put them up onto the learning management system for them to download, print off, complete, scan, and send back. And you know, encourage you to think about, as you use resources that you might have used in the classroom, think about ways that you might be able to enhance them a little bit to make them fit the mode of delivery. So, for example, with that worksheet that my middle son has, scanning it and adding some text boxes where he could respond is a real way just to enhance that a little bit and make it easier for him, for the parent, but also for you when you get it back to be able to kind of go through it and look at it. So really would encourage you, as you're looking at resources, as you're thinking about them, always think about the learning that you're trying to achieve, and always think about that learning. Let's not lose sight of that learning. Let's not lose sight of the importance of giving feedback in order to improve the learning iteratively. And I see that acknowledging how hard that may could be in this journey. It's not easy to give a kindergarten kid back on the work that they're doing. It's not easy to do that. And I think it was Chris that, no, it was Beverly that made the point about the timetables that she sees online. Again, I kind of look at my own kids. We are about to move into day 3 of kids at home. And I think about my youngest, and we all know that early years, kindergarten, year 1, year 2, primary 1, primary 2, whatever we call it in our region, we all know that so much of what goes on in those classrooms is about social interaction. It's about learning to socialize, learning to interact. That's a huge part of the learning. So when we start to try to provide resources for those young people, we have to acknowledge that it's going to be really difficult, I would say impossible, and I would also say ineffective to be looking to provide 6 hours worth of work each day for those young people, because it's really hard to say that the whole day was just about academics sitting there in front of pieces of paper. So really start to think about how you can give the essential learning. And I think one of the things that I've seen and think's a really great idea is think about how you might be able to create a pack for parents. I mean, I say pack, that sounds really overwhelming because it sounds like it should be glossy and polished and pretty. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm suggesting an A4 sheet of paper with suggestions of things that they could do to engage their young people in the learning, aside from the work that's been set before them. So, for example, yesterday, and like Chris, you know, I'm an educator. My wife's also an educator. We're both working from home at the moment. And yesterday just got, quite honestly, too much. It got too much for us. And I'm not going to pretend that it didn't, but it got too much for us. And we ended up putting our 3 kids by 10:30 yesterday morning in front of the TV. Now, I would call that a homeschool parenting fail or a quarantine parenting fail. But we put them in front of the TV. I had a conference call, my wife had a conference call. It was the only way to stop them fighting with each other. It was the only way. And, you know, I'm just being honest and real. We put them in front of a movie. But the gold was, and this was my wife's idea, not mine, at the end of the movie, the 12-year-old had to go and write an essay about one of the characters and their interaction. The 9-year-old had to go and write a piece that was describing their favourite character, and they had to write a piece describing it. And the youngest had to draw their favourite character and be able to tell us why. And all of a sudden, there's a great idea. There's a way that we can connect home with the learning and give parents those ideas. And there's a few of them out there. The Twitter sphere is full of some ideas, and spend some time looking through Twitter, you see some ideas. But ideas like that, ideas that kind of help the parents to feel like they have an out, but they also are doing some learning. And I think those things are really important. Sorry, Chris, I think I spoke over you.
No, that was a long time ago anyway. I think that's a great point. I think there are definitely pros and cons of remote teaching and learning. We all know that, but leverage some of those pros. Leverage the fact that they're with the families. So things like the kitchen, they're great places of real learning where we can try and incorporate some maths, potentially the movie idea. I think one of the greatest things about remote teaching and learning is the flexibility. And I think similarly to what Alan said, I had a newsletter come home from one of my kids' schools, and it said, set up the day at home exactly like it is at school. So do your 2 hour block in the morning, then have your recess or your little lunch. And I just thought, you know what, that doesn't actually work for us. That might work for some. And so I thought, no, we're gonna be flexible. Flexibility is one of the greatest things about remote teaching and learning. So use that. Remember that as your student's teacher, you know your students better than anyone. And I think that's probably the next thing I'd say is, like Alan said, we're teaching the whole person, and don't forget that, and don't underestimate that that presence you have in this student's life. You are going to be that calming presence, that source of connection, that emotional support that they might not be getting anywhere else. So I've heard some really great ideas in the last couple of days of it's not groundbreaking teaching by any stretch, but it's having a profound impact on kids. I heard one story of a teacher who was reading a book in class, and what they did is they simply recorded them reading the book, and that's the little 10-minute thing that the kid has to do each morning, and it really provides them that that source of connectivity, that I suppose that connection back to what used to be normal. And this teacher is that real source of continuity, that real solid rock in the student's life. So don't underestimate the influence that you have on the student. I think the only other thing I'd mention in terms of what you were talking about, Alan, is that just going back to that idea of sustainability, closing the loop. We know as educators that we need to give the students feedback for that sort of iterative process to continue on. We need to give them feedback, tell them how they're going, and so they can improve that next time around. So incorporate that in your thinking when you're trying to come up with a sustainable plan. Think, you know what, I need to close that loop. So what am I going to have to do that? And be creative. Leverage the things that you've got at your fingertips. So you've got parents there. A lot of parents are willing to have a crack. So tell them how they can help close that loop. You might be getting some work back and giving the feedback more conventionally, but you can also do things like potentially peer reviewing, a lot of self-assessment, those types of ideas, self-evaluation, maybe some rubrics to help them to be able to close those loops themselves. So be creative, but don't forget to plan that into how you're going to come up with a sustainable plan, because you might be sort of giving all this work and you forget about all the work that's going to be coming back in and you end up being overwhelmed. So just, again, be kind to yourself.
Beverly,
Yeah, I think
what about the whole idea of, sorry, Beverly, I just got a question for you there. What about the whole idea of the students who don't have internet access or don't have access to devices? What's your thoughts? What's your input on that one?
That's what I actually was just about to talk about. So the importance of, we're on the same wavelength, the importance of actually engaging parents and making sure that parents know, the expectations. And I mean, here in Northern Ireland, it very much varies from school to school. I'm in a similar situation to yourself where my daughter has been sent home with a learning pack of activities for 4 weeks, all paper-based. My son, who is now at post-primary, has, I think, between emails, 4 different platforms which he has to complete his work via and submit. And all of it is online. He needs a device for everything. And that's great because we have a device for him. But there are many families who possibly only have a mobile phone or a tablet of some description. And I think it's just being aware of each family situation. A lot of schools here in the UK would do surveys amongst their pupils to see who has access and where they have access, and possibly even who supervises. I mean, there's a huge implication here for online safety for students as well if they are online. But I think contact with parents from the school is vital at this point. First of all, we get emails sent out to us But again, there's the assumption that parents are able to pick up those emails, that they are internet savvy, that they are able to respond to the emails, that they're able to supervise their children online. And there's no easy, fast, one-fit solution for that. So I think at this point in time, I've had my kids off a full week now, plus 3 days this week. So, and I still would say, as an educator, my kids and myself are in a huge adjustment period. It's trying to get a little bit done each day. I can't say there's an awful lot of school learning being done. It's a case of mommy needs to go and take a call with work here, or I need to do some work. Could you sit and do that worksheet? That's a great, I'm nearly basing how well they've done on how quiet they are and how much they're out of my hair. Quality parenting, quality teaching, but that's, that's part of the survival period that we're in at this moment in time. And, the longer we are here, the more we will adjust, the more we'll refine, the more we'll see what works and what doesn't work. But schools, I think the big thing at this point in time is that schools do need to have some sort of contact with parents. And if you're in a school where you are able to directly contact parents, that's fantastic. I know that's not possible in every school here. But parents need that reassurance. They need that reassurance that there will be something provided to keep their children's education going, and that there will be some sort of feedback to support parents. Instructions for lessons, for activities, just as you were saying, Alan, about that sort of closing the learning loop. Parents will need support in terms of, we're adding today, or we're multiplying, or whatever the activity is. Here's some guidance to do it, and yet it's that borderline between being able to empower parents to support their kids in their learning journey, while realizing that they aren't trained as teachers, so they don't have all the pedagogy that you will have. They don't have the experience of delivering a lesson in a possibly a perfect classroom situation. But it's survival at the moment, and it's what they can do that will keep their kids moving along with their education, keep them busy, keep them active, keep them learning. And that, I think, what I'm starting to learn as a parent and as a teacher is that learning experiences at this moment in time are going to be home-based. So it is, come and help me make dinner. Now let's talk about how many potatoes we used, or how much rice we weighed out, or how many ingredients we need. Okay, we might not be able to go to the shop for all of these things, but we can at least talk about it. And that, you've got the communication there, and the talking and listening, that whole sort of language development, which is, I think maybe out of this, one of the things that really will happen is that kids do come back with a newfound appreciation of communication and how they interact with each other.
Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful. So I'm really keen to give some practical examples. I think we've given some, but I'm keen for us to give more practical examples of what we have heard and seen in these last few weeks. But I'm also keen to answer your questions. So at this point in time, if you've got any questions, please pop them into the question spot so that we can talk about them and chat them through. Like we say, we want this to be as useful and as relevant as it possibly can be to you out there at home, in your school, as you plan for this. So please pop in questions, and we will make sure that A, we try and answer them, and B, we give as practical as we can examples of what's going on. Chris, I know that you wanted to touch on something.
Yeah, so I suppose it's probably a helpful discussion to talk about the different ways that we can deliver some of these remote learnings to our students. I think there's a big push to do things synchronously sometimes, so do things sort of live and at the same time, and I suppose not as much push on doing things asynchronously, which means just sort of passing them over, and students can do them at their own pace in their own time. But I just want to encourage you that there's pros and cons of both. We need to be sustainable, but there are lots of good ideas out there where you can have that synchronous learning experience where you might have all the students together at once and you're sort of replicating or emulating the lesson that takes place. But you do have to have a lot of things come together for that. We need students to have devices, to have good internet, to have that time free, all at the same time. So whilst you can have a great learning experience, is often a lot of input, a lot of things have to go right. And you know what? You might try that one week. You might want to sort of give it a crack, and then you might say next week, "Hey guys, you know that webinar we tried, or that collaborative learning task we tried together, that flopped, and that's okay. Let's try something a little bit different." But don't underestimate things like asynchronous learning. So sending out a video that students can watch at their own pace. They can rewind and fast forward and do what they want. Sending out tasks where they can really leverage that whole idea of being flexible. Yeah, don't be too hard on yourself and think I need to do all these sort of live things. Yeah, great, have a crack if you have the time. But sending out those asynchronous activities can also have a great impact, and it means they've got that resource that they can use. It means they can work at their own pace. Do you guys have anything else to speak to that?
I think what I would say is consider the benefits and the pros and cons of each. I think there is absolute pros and cons in each, and I think if I just talk about it from a business perspective in terms of us trying to operate as an organisation, we've had all of our staff globally at home now, and we're able to do that for 2 weeks. And the challenge of online kind of synchronous meetings has probably increased in difficulty as more and more people have moved to remote working, and more kids are at home, and the internet, certainly here where I am in Sydney, is struggling at points. The mobile phone connectivity is struggling, and I know what it's like in a classroom when the technology fails me. We've all been there when we have this whiz bang lesson planned and the technology doesn't work, and it's frustrating, it's demoralizing, and it's incredibly not good for your sanity or mental health space. And so I think there's absolutely a need to just balance off the opportunities as well, and test things out. And I see some real benefits and positives in this time of doing things synchronously. I can see the real benefits. My 12-year-old son, and I can't talk about my own kids. My 12-year-old son is having his maths lesson every day by Zoom, using Zoom, and I watch him get a little bit excited about connecting with his mates and his teachers in that time. And I also watch the technology fail them, but I see the value in that connection. And Angela's asked a question about connection. Angela, our next section, which we'll move on to in just a second, is all about connection. So we'll definitely talk about that. But there's definitely value in that kind of synchronous space. But at the same point, I think there's absolute value in having activities planned that are asynchronous. And here we are talking to you synchronously. And when we planned these webinars and spoke about them, we thought through the, do we just record and in recording a webinar or recording videos and put them out there, or do we do live webinars? And we came to the conclusion that the connection right now was really important, and the understanding the problems that were faced by teachers and kind of trying to respond to them in real time was worth the effort to do this live and to connect with you right now. And the video will still be provided afterwards. So there are ways to explore it in different senses. And I think one of the other things I would say is, and I remember saying this to student teachers or prac students that came out to my school or faculty, remember to get the kids to do the work. And I say that really respectfully. I don't say that in a way that's but often we need to think smart, and we need to plan creatively in a way that empowers the students to own the learning and to own the journey more than us. And I think back to my early teaching career, where I would invest at a factor of 3 compared to the output and the work that the students would do. And sometimes that's necessary, and particularly in this time we're going to find ourselves. But think about ways that you can harness technology if you have it to get your kids working. You know, things like if they are using technology and acknowledging that they don't all have it, if they're using technology, there's opportunities to get them to record videos, to do podcasts, to create videos of their learning, to self-evaluate, to self-reflect. There's all of that stuff, and it's easy. Some things are easier to bring equity to than others. So, you know, just because I'm recording a podcast because I have technology doesn't mean that we can't get another kid scripting a podcast at the same time in that kind of equity, synchronous, asynchronous way. So, you know, I would think that let's be creative in how we use things, and don't throw everything out the window just because we've gone remote. Think about how you can adjust things.
And I think if I reflect on some of my best lessons, my best learning experiences with the students, it's when I'm a facilitator of learning. So I think gone are the days where teachers are sort of the font of all knowledge and we're imparting that wisdom. We're now facilitators of learning, and let's leverage the things that we do have in this time. And a lot of them do have the internet at their fingertips. So there's an absolute plethora of information out there. So use that, get them to do the hard work. So give them those rich tasks, those open-ended tasks. And for me, one of the best things, one of the best resources I ever used was actually students in my class. So they often saw things a different way to the way I saw them. We could have some great discussions, and you could feedback from those discussions, and they could teach each other. So see if we can emulate that. See if we can have those places where it might be an open forum, it might be a space of collaboration, but really get them to do a lot of that work. The responsibility is not just ours to impart, but be that facilitator. And I think that's where the best learning takes place. But we also have a really wonderful opportunity to leverage the things that we do have at our fingertips at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think just before we move on to the next section, because I'm acutely aware of time, before we move on to the next section, just Erin, to answer your question, there are some support videos and instructional videos in Mathletics. You will find them in there. There are some there. Some of them are a little bit dated, but they're certainly conceptually useful and helpful in that journey. I want to move on to our next section now with a little bit under 15 minutes to go. I want us to pivot on to the next section that we have today, and that section is around connection. And you know, one of the things I say to anyone who listens to me, and that's not very many people, particularly at home where I'm stuck just now, but one of the things I'll say to anyone that listens to me is that teaching is a social endeavor, because learning is a social endeavor. And in fact, teaching is not a science, it's an art. And so in so many ways, if it were a science, we could find one perfect solution and we could just replicate it around the countries and around the world and just say, here you go, here's the best way to do learning and teaching. But it's not. And we all became teachers because, well, I'm sure we all have our own reasons as to why we became teachers, but ultimately we became teachers, I hope, because we enjoy the interaction and the connection with young people in the classroom. We enjoy seeing that light bulb moment, as I call it, happen in their classroom. Sometimes it's on a weekly basis, sometimes it's on a daily basis. If it's a good day, it's on an hourly basis, but we enjoy that light bulb moment. We enjoy connecting with young people, and we enjoy seeing the spark of learning become a fire of learning, to be very cliched and melodramatic. And right now we are disconnected from that. And you know, I love this quote from where is it? Lost it now. I had it written down. It's right here. From Kayla Delzer. He says, relationships between students and passionate teachers will always be the foundation of successful classrooms. Let me say it again. Relationships between students and passionate teachers will always be the foundation of successful classrooms. And that is true whether that classroom is a real classroom, a literal physical classroom, or whether it is a virtual classroom, whether it's a virtual remote classroom. And it's really important that we maintain those connections. It's really important that we think about ways to connect with the young people, it's really important that we remember that right now they are disconnected. They are feeling like they are unsure of what's going on. There may well be uncertainty going on at home. There may well be disconnection. There may well be fear going on at home. And so we need to connect with those young people at home. And I think there are novel ways to do it. And I know that both Beverly and Chris have got ideas on how to do that. But those connections are really important. And I think it's important that we prioritise them. Beverly, give us some ways that we can stay connected with our students while they're remote.
Well, it really depends on your setting, whether you're primary school, post-primary school, what access you've had directly to students before this pandemic has taken place. Through the primary setting, again, some schools have web pages set up. I know for my own daughter, while there's no actual direct contact with her and her teacher, her school's app and website have little messages that are posted each day. So the teacher might pop up something for parents to read, and I could direct them to an author who is reading his book, or a little video that could be become part of learning at home. So watch this little video, discuss it with your parents, and as Alan said, maybe write about it, draw about it. I think it will become a lot easier as things start to settle. I know a lot of teachers are still trying to work out what this new norm is, whether they're going to be at home or whether they're in schools supervising, because we've been told it's a supervision service, children of key workers. And there's issues with just trying to find stability in that and trying to find what is going to work. In the post-primary, I know we've mentioned about feedback, where my son has submitted his work online. Little comments, where his work has been marked digitally by the teacher, and just little comments come back. They pop up on his either on his email or through the app that he's using, and it just lets him know that what he's submitting is being looked at. His teacher is valuing it and has given some direct feedback, which helps him to take his learning to the next stage. And it's also actually quite good as a parent, where instead of me having to say, do your work, do your homework, have you checked your homework, I know that his teacher is looking out for his work as well. So two adults are better than one, whenever it comes to education. He gets it from both sides. But I think, I read somewhere, about a teacher who, and I think maybe some of my colleagues were talking about it as well, a teacher who would normally have given her pupils a birthday card on their birthdays. And now that students are all at home, couldn't do that. And what she did was just on the child's birthday, on the pupil's birthday, was able to phone the home and just wish the child a happy birthday. And, it's just a small token like that can go a long way. So, yeah, I think it really, think about what has been your practice up until now, how you would have connected with the students in your class, and then think of ways in which you can adapt that in a practical way, in a way that doesn't necessarily have to add a lot of extra pressure on you, but just shows your students that you are still thinking about them, even though you can't actually physically have them in the classroom. I think that's the big thing,
I think time and time again we see anecdotally, we see empirically the importance of relationship in the classroom, and especially in this time, there is a lot of fear, there is a lot of anxiety. If we think that we're feeling overwhelmed, imagine the students, and we've all tried to teach those students that aren't feeling secure, they're not feeling connected, they're not feeling emotionally supported, and it's impossible to teach them. So I think we have to remember that, and I've spoken about it previously, but we have the potential to be that person of support, that real calming presence, that stability in the student's life, the source of connection, both to people, but also back to what was normal, and even that emotional support. Like, we don't know what's happening in households at the moment, but it's probably fair to say that a lot of households, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of families are going through tough financial times as well. So connect with them, find ways of building that relationship, speaking into their lives. And I do think we underestimate the impact we have as teachers sometimes. You know, you have those conversations with students where they say, "Hey, sir, do you remember that thing you said 3 years ago?" And you're just like, "I have no idea." But the kids, they hang on to things. They see you as a real source of stability in their life. So keep that in mind and use that to try and build into their lives. But don't forget, it's also really difficult to try and teach them outcomes from the curriculum if you haven't got that connection, if they're not feeling that stability. So for me, that's my first goal, is sort of making that connection, but also connecting, trying to connect with those parents as well, trying to give them some resources, trying to give them some ideas. Don't sort of mandate, say you have to do this, but there are a lot of parents that want to get on board. If we think that we're sort of overwhelmed with our students struggling, you've got every parent out there also saying, is my kid going to fall behind throughout this time? So keep all those things in mind. But I think we can't underplay the importance of relationship and connection through this time. I know that teachers are relational people. We are all sort of craving that relationship. We're used to having kids around us the whole time, a staff room to go back to, and now we're sort of sitting in isolation. It is really, really tough. We're going stir crazy. One other little encouragement I would have, as Bev was chatting, I was thinking about this. We're not sort of just changing things up whilst we're in isolation, whilst we're sort of in this pandemic. I think all the different things that we're doing and trying now, I think they're gonna change the way we teach. They're going to improve the way we teach in the future when we go back to the classroom as well. I don't think education goes back to being the same way it was ever again. I think this is going to really have a positive impact on how we teach, how we do remote learning, how we connect with students as well. So don't feel like, oh, this is all wasted, because as soon as this finishes, we're going to go back to it. I think all these skills we're going to find, you know what, there are other ways of doing things, and if we can find silver linings, this is a time where we're encouraged. Well, not encouraged, we have to, don't we? We have to find new ways of connecting it, and hopefully we'll see all the great learning that comes out of this, and we'll be able to implement lots of these ideas in the future.
And I think just on the back of that, I think really practically look for ways to connect. You know, think about the age group and the audience that you have in student wise. Are they going to get a real kick out of a video that comes from you each morning? It may well only go for a couple of minutes, but it may well be the thing that they watch 2 or 3 times across the day to really keep them sustained, if you like, and really keep them ongoing. Or is it a little email, or is it a touch point with your class using your learning management system, your online learning platform, whatever that might be? Is it a 15-minute touch call that touches base with all of them? Look for different innovative ways that might work to try and keep connected with them, because it's really, really important, and it's really significant that we keep that going. Because for some people, we are as Chris said, the calming influence. The other thing I would say is it's really important that you keep connected with each other. And the school leaders that are with us today, and I know that there are a number of them, let me encourage you to make sure that you are connecting your staff, and look for ways to connect with your colleagues, not just your stage partner, or not just those that you normally sit next to or around in the staff room, although that's important, but have a coffee with them virtually. Use online platforms to connect with them. As teachers are social beings, we really are, and so look for that way to connect. Have a virtual coffee, do whatever you need to do to stay connected and have ideas. Look for ways to connect more broadly through things like this. We really hope and plan to keep these webinars going week in, week out, in order to really help people stay connected. And I, like I said at the start, I want to make sure that these are useful. We want to make sure that these are worthwhile to you. There is no point in us offering these. There's no point in us offering these seminars if they're not useful to you guys. So we want to keep them connected. We want to make sure that they are useful. We want to make sure that they're relevant to you, but stay connected to each other, stay connected to us. I know that there are lots of ideas. We've got Joyce has made the idea of how you work with collaboration. Look at how, if you're a team teacher, look at how you can share the load with team teaching or with parents, so that one day, one person does the teaching and the next day the other, and you support and you encourage in different ways. There's lots of ways to do it, and I think the quote that Joyce said is really useful. The support of others keeps the isolation fears away, and I think that's really important. Connect with each other, look for ways to make it work. Tell us. I'm really keen to hear what's working and what's not. Chris, can you maybe put up that slide with our contact details on it? We would love to keep in contact with you. We'd love to hear what's working, what's not. We'd also like to hear from you what is helpful for us to talk about next week. What would you like us to explore, research, and have a conversation about? We've got some ideas, things like what's the key things that should be in a remote learning and teaching toolbox, and how's that similar or different to what happens in the classroom toolbox, and a whole host of others. But we'd rather make sure that they are useful to you and they're what you want to hear and they're pertinent to you. So please reach out, send an email, tweet us, follow us and join us on Twitter, where we'll try and share some ideas across the week, and really do whatever you can to stay connected to each other and stay connected to us. Really want to thank you for being here today. I think if there are 3 things that you could take away from today, number 1 would be do everything you can to find things that are sustainable for you. We're in that sustainability phase, and look for ways to stay sustainable as you journey through this. As you're planning and as you're thinking about what you're doing, look for ways to close the learning loops. Always think about those learning loops and how you can close them. And finally, remember that connections are really important. Connections are really important and really significant. So thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time. We know how precious time is, and we look forward to you joining us again next time. Thanks, Dan. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.